back to another episode of Mind Over Masculinity, the podcast where we challenge the stereotypes, explore the emotional depth, and also redefine what strength really looks like inside and out. I'm your host Avik, and today we are talking about a leadership philosophy that's often overlooked in the world of men's mental health, but desperately needed. Yes. So, leading with your heart, your head, and your hands. Joining me is someone who embodies that balance in every way. Yes. Vicki Noethling. So, welcome to the show, Vicki.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be on with you.
Amazing, amazing. Thank you so much, Vicky, for joining us today. And before we delve deep into this topic, I'll quickly love to introduce you to all the listeners.
hmm
Dear listeners, from her 40 plus years in corporate America to mentoring young leaders through Toastmasters, she has walked the talk of servant leadership. So she's a podcast host, author, summit creator, and someone who's not afraid to combine the emotional intelligence with the strategic execution. Yes. So, dear listeners, today isn't just about a career advice, it's all about the purpose. It's about becoming the kind of leader who creates impact not just in the boardroom, but in your relationships, your community, and most importantly, within yourself. So, I'll not take much of your time, dear listeners. Let's get into it. Welcome to the show again. So, Vicky, your journey is definitely a dynamic one, like from corporate projects to youth leadership. So, how did you personally come to understand that the need to lead with both your heart and your head?
Whenever I started at corporate way back in the late 70s,
Mm.
I knew I wasn't going to be able to afford college, so I just went to business school and
Okay.
always felt, probably for the next 30 years, that I was less and that I needed to just follow those people that were successful. And in that time frame, in that decade really, most of the leaders, the managers that you might have would be male. I was fortunate my very first office manager, though, was female. And she started those lessons of building relationships and the importance of that. And I used to joke around that she used to give me butt reviews every year. And
Yeah.
what those were we would sit down for my yearly review. How are you doing? And I was administrative front desk person for an accounting firm at that time. And so for 10 years, she would tell me, what did I do great? And then she'd say, but here's some areas that you might improve and why. And her experiences. And she became actually a very good friend as I left that company and went on to new adventures. So that was my first person who really taught me that it was important for you to understand the people that work with you so that when you give that but, you can make them understand why it's important that they take that next step, that they are able
Mm.
to learn from it. The next 10 years, oh gosh, next 27 years, I was fortunate to have some other mentors. And there are so many people that I think go through and they don't seek out mentorship or someone to guide them. And so each mentor that I had didn't just tell me how to do something your way. I had plenty of people, bosses in those 27 years that tried to tell me, this is how you do it, exactly this way, and, my way or the highway.
Mm.
But I found that that frustrated myself and others it sometimes angered you because it wasn't n natural, it didn't feel authentic for me to lead that way.
Mm. Yep.
And so I soon, uh, went back to college at
Mhm.
46 and found, "Oh my gosh, what
Mm.
my gut has been telling me all these years is really the way to lead people, not just manage people, but lead people." And I think,
Yes.
that's so important that you use both. And this is for men and women, but you use both energies you have.
Mm.
You have female energy, which your gut, your intuition, and then you have your masculine energy, which gives you that boldness and that courage to do things
Mm.
that you thought you never could do, to say yes at a challenge that really is an opportunity for growth and development. And
Mhm.
so the heart is really that trusting your gut, building relationships with people, not just thinking of those on your team, even up and down the line, but those are people that you need to get to understand and build
Mm.
relationships, and that will build trust. And when you have that trust and are being your authentic self, knowing that not everybody's going to like you, but
Mhm.
sometimes you have to work with people that you just don't agree with, that you don't follow their values
Mm.
and and sometimes that makes you really have to make a decision that says this isn't
Right.
a right place for me. There were as I was a manager, there were times where I had people that I saw that the fit wasn't right. But because of the relationship that we had together, that you could have that discussion with them and say,
Mm.
these are areas where you're just not a right fit for this job, but let's find where you might find something that really motivates you, that really excites you. What
Mm.
skills do I need to help you grow so that you'll feel
Right.
comfortable and confident enough to take on this new opportunity? And people respect you when you're that way, when you can be honest with them. And it's not saying that they're a poor employee or that they don't have what it takes. It's just there are certain jobs that you have that you may not be right for. I always worry that whenever parents, and as you said, I work with a youth because I see
Mm.
so many screwed up adults as I'm trying to coach in their 30s and 40s and 20s sometimes that went into a career, went into a job because their parents said, okay, doctor, lawyer, engineer, these are the jobs that will make most money.
Yes.
But making
True.
the most money doesn't mean that you will excel in that because you will be frustrated if it truly isn't the right fit. And so you have to be that person that can, have those hard discussions and say,
Mm.
I want to be excited every morning to wake up to go to a job that I have. And sometimes that means that you're going to take those first jobs that aren't making you the most money
Mm.
until you find that job that really excites you, that really is your passion, your purpose.
Mm.
So, as I said, first you've built those relationships, and then the
Mm.
head part is really being able to talk strategy to
Mm.
kind of connect the dots. Why are you doing what you're doing? Is it the right thing to be doing? And then if you are in a job that is the right fit, but you're trying to get ahead to get to that next level, then
Mm.
it's important that you seek people that are at that next level and be comfortable and confident, maybe courageous enough to ask questions of them so that you get to know more, to be able to understand how they do what they do, why they do what they do, where are
Mm.
you lacking what they would be looking for to move you to that next level. And as you do that, then you're going to find that you should be always willing to give back more than you get. So that's the
Mm.
hands, the servant leader. When I started in business, as just that administrative person who was really the strength of a lot of organizations is the workers, if you will. I sought volunteer opportunities always because I didn't have a lot of money, I didn't have a lot of education, but I had time and I had willingness. And so I found that every volunteer organization, from building houses to marching for causes, walking, doing walks and runs for causes, I was side by side with people that were where I wanted to be. And they were willing to tell me how they got there. And so it was just natural as I was starting to climb the ladder and step out of my comfort zone that I would take someone with me. So that's the heart, the head, and the hands.
Wow, that's a brilliant explanation, I would say. I mean, so many men carry this burden of being
Mhm.
like rational providers, but suppressing the emotions,
Mhm.
it actually builds the world. So I think when we talk about this leading with the heart, we are also talking about giving ourselves that permission to feel. What do you say on this?
Well, it's true. I was recently interviewed and they said, when I was talking about the importance of empathy and
Mm,
emotional intelligence as part of the heart centered piece, and they said, well, can you be an effective manager if you are focusing on that?
mm,
And I, I was like, well, of course. One of the folks that I
mm,
recently interviewed, um, she was talking about the fact that litigation in corporations
yeah,
would be lessened if we use more emotional intelligence. And it made perfect sense because sometimes what you say,
mm,
especially if you're a man, and not thinking about the emotion of how you said it, the reaction that would happen,
mm,
putting yourself in that person's place that you're reprimanding or trying to motivate through strong, uh, demeaning words, if you will.
mm,
Um, how would you feel if someone spoke to you that way? How would you want to be motivated to do more, to move mountains for this organization, this cause, this project? Emotional intelligence is key to your being able to get people to do 110%. You can tell me all day long what a screw up I'll be, or if I don't do it exactly the way you did it, then I'm not going to be successful. But just like GPS, which I tell my people all
mm,
the time, is GPS, when you put in a destination, how you get there could be many different ways. And it doesn't mean that one way is better than the other. It's just a way to get there. Maybe it will take you a little longer, but if you get where you're trying to go, then it's okay. Now, of course, in some situations where time, as a project manager, there were times where I was time bound. I had to get the projects done. So now it's like, okay, when I'm explaining to you how to do it, it's not because you my way's the best way. It's just I have done it this way and I know how long it takes. So I'd like for me to teach you how to do it this
mm,
way and so that you can be more efficient to get there. But along the way, if your way would save
mm,
time from my way, I am going to listen to you. I'm going to embrace that and
yeah,
change. And so I think sometimes in my experience with working with some men, it's,
mm,
well, this is the way I've always done it. So this is the way we're going to do it and not be open to change, to accept that maybe there's a different way. And so I think that's what both men
mm,
and women have to realize, that change is scary, change is different,
mm,
but change can be better.
yeah,
And you should try it. I always say, if it's not gonna put you in jail or kill you, you should try it.
Mm.
If it
Mm.
fails, learn from that.
Yeah.
Embrace the opportunity to learn something from that failure as opposed to trying to avoid it and staying stuck in your old ways.
Yep. Yep. Exactly. Wow. And like if I talk about in today's leadership, like today's leadership landscape, where uh, what to say, like where performance is everything, like we
Mhm.
uh, just taking care of the performances only. So how do we make a space for the hands, like um, the doing part without burning out? So what do you have to say?
You know, uh,
Hmm.
I guess I always think, well, maybe I'm not the right person to talk to about this, but,
Okay.
maybe I am. So, I used to work 80 to 90 hours a week
Mhm.
for my
Okay.
project management job, and I still volunteered. The reason I volunteered and the reason I went to Toastmaster meetings to improve
Mhm.
and professional develop myself in
Okay.
my leadership was because it was different.
Mm.
And being a different, uh, activity
Okay.
can help you be able to do the mundane that you have to do
Mm.
every day. So, when I went to build houses, that was totally different than me, doing reports and leading Zoom calls and things.
Mm.
W I taught for a time, uh, at UPS, as a special assignment, loading and unloading our trailers.
Mm.
Very manual, very exhausting, uh, totally different because your mind is focused on doing a simple task
Mm.
over and over and over. But it is a wonderful time to open up your mind. I always tell
Mm.
people when you're stuck in, sitting at your computer and you're stuck at writing or figuring out a problem that you have, do a manual labor, take a walk. I scrub the floor or, clean the house because I work from home now. But that taking my mind off what the problem was actually and doing that manual labor actually opens up my mind to figure out the problems and solve that
Mm.
problem. It's one of those things where when you get out of your way, your mind is
Mm.
allowing then to be creative and innovative. So, volunteering was a great
Mm.
way, again, for me to network, not creepy like, where you're just there because you're trying to network, but it was really able to network because you truly, authentically wanted to know about that person and were interested in the stories that they told about their lives and what they do. And so you then build this resource of people that you can go to. Uh, I would volunteer at the office to do special projects,
Yeah.
not because I was, wanting to have more hours in my week, but because I thought it would help me
Mm.
grow. It would help me be more of an asset because now I would know a different part of the business.
Mm.
So, yes, volunteering, being of service to people. My whole point of mentoring others as I
Mm.
became more of a senior person at the company was
Mm.
because I saw people struggling, young people coming in that were
Yeah.
too green or too afraid to ask for help or
Mm.
ask for a mentor. And so you just volunteer. It's like, well, hey, let's have lunch. Let's
Mm.
just, work on a project together or do that presentation in front of this small group and let's see how it goes. Where it's no pressure on you to, it's okay to screw up
Mm.
because you're going to be given guidance and help, given a different perspective before you go in front of those people that are
Mm.
signing your paycheck.
Yeah. True. Like how do you personally manage that tension? Like, I mean, being in action and being in alignment. I mean, both at the same time. I mean, just wanted to understand definitely.
Yeah. They, every person is different, but
Mhm.
what I found, especially, um,
Mm.
and I have lots of podcasts on conflict resolution, things you should
Okay.
watch. But
Yeah.
what I found personally is
Mm.
that sometimes you need space. And so, not to say what first comes to your mind, sometimes I'd have to say, hey, you know what? I think I need to have take a break here, get
Mhm.
a drink of water. Why don't we just take 10 or something? Just so you can just walk away from that tension for a minute. Maybe there are times though that you're in a meeting and you can't do that. Where the meeting is going
Mm.
on and somebody confronts you at the meeting. It always helps to rephrase that question that, let me just make sure that I understand, or could you tell me more? All those things give you time to decide what you should say next and how you should say what you say next.
Mm.
Obviously, I've never been one that is a screamer or yeller. That's not in my makeup. And so I find whenever the person is screaming and yelling at me,
Mm.
I talk even quieter to them.
Okay.
It just kinda deflates. It's like you're not giving them energy back from what they're saying. Sometimes it frustrates them, sometimes, but you have to just understand the situation, and
Mm.
again, if you start screaming, you may send or if you, try to be aggressive in the situation, you may escalate things. Um, if you see that there's just really at this point, there is not gonna be a resolution until both parties have more information, then that's when you have to just say, "I think that we just have to step away from this for a minute, put it in the parking lot,"
Mm.
whatever you wanna say, "and let's find out a little bit more, about what both of our positions are, and then come back and discuss it at a later time." All of those things, just
Mm.
taking a breath, stepping away, not escalating with your voice and your
Mm.
actions just will help the situation. And you will have some people that they let their ego get in the way. And I always say, you be the bigger person. Don't let your ego get in the way.
Yeah.
Um, and also, for some of my lady people out there, don't cave either.
Mm.
If you have a position, then state your case, but in a logical, even-toned way.
Yeah.
And, sometimes you're gonna get that person, and I've had those managers, those bosses,
Mm.
where they didn't wanna hear anything you had to say. And sometimes then that's when you start to evaluate whether or not the job that you have is the job that you need.
Yeah. Exactly. Oh, I love that distinction. Wow. Um, and also, if like you mentioned about the Toastmasters, so uh,
Mhm.
I mean that's definitely a great platform to start the speaking journey for sure. I even also thought of about that. I've been there, but not able to complete regularly. But yes, once or twice I've been there. But uh, so you mentored young people through
Mhm.
Toastmasters. That's the amazing part
Do.
of it. But yeah, and so like, what have you learned? I mean, from there, like about the masculinity through watching young boys step
Mhm.
into the leadership.
I teach 9 to 17-year-olds, and
Mm.
what I see is the young ones, the 9 and 10-year-olds,
Mm.
they are eager to learn and are
mm,
not trying to compete as much as the middle school, high schoolers especially. Well, I guess it probably starts in the
mm,
12 or 13-year-olds where they are so afraid of not
mm.
being cool, if for the lack of a better word.
Okay.
And so they will say things because they think it's what
Mm,
they should say and not
okay.
be themselves, not truly say what they think because they're afraid if they say
Mm,
what they think and it's not what is the right answer, the cool answer,
mm,
that people will laugh at them. People will think
mm,
less of them and they won't be accepted in the crowd. And that at that the age, they all are trying to
mm.
be part of a pack some way, somehow, you know.
Okay.
And so it's the ability that we have in this realm of public speaking, and I really just call it confidence building is what I'm doing, is giving them the confidence, the courage
Mm,
to say what they want to say and stand
mm,
with courage in their conviction of saying it. And whenever during the Toastmaster session, while they're speaking, no one is to interrupt them. They have
right.
4 minutes of open time. And what I found that is so interesting, especially when I work with kids
Mm,
that are somewhat at risk, even in their home life, nobody
mm,
gives them 4 minutes
true.
of uninterrupted conversation.
Mm,
They're interrupted immediately. They're either told that was stupid or why would you
mm,
say that or, uh, you know, just giving them comments back that do not help them feel comfortable or confident. And that just plays. I had one of the psychologists in a group that I work with,
mm,
and she gave us this wonderful demonstration using a paper plate and
okay.
uh, toothpaste, colored toothpaste. And she had the parent
Mhm,
talk about when she comes home from work and the kids
okay.
have been home for an hour or two, latch kids or whatever. And so when she left that day, she told them when they came home, clean your room, do your homework and all those things. And she comes home and they haven't done anything. The house is a wreck. She's exhausted, had a rough day, and she just lets them have it.
Uh,
You know, all of those
yeah.
things that she says at those moments, and the person talks about, and you hear this from your teachers, you hear this from your your peers, you hear it
Mm,
from yourself. I'm not worthy, I'm ugly, I don't know what to do, I'm just not uh, capable. All of these things that we say to ourselves, you put all those dabs on that paper plate.
mm,
And then the instructor said, "Now take it away. Put it back." And you can't. And so what I find when I get these kids and adults, they've had years of this,
mm,
words put on them,
mm,
labels put on them, and you can't take it back. So what I have to do is try to unpeel all this so that they are comfortable again
mm,
to say what they mean, to be comfortable of expressing themselves
mhm,
in a way that truly is expressive. When they give you a speech that, they're going to only be comfortable for they read it word for word, but that doesn't allow you to put in that emotion, that feeling that will make
mm,
that talk, that speech memorable. And sometimes in their stories, there is sadness and tears. And how do we react in this safe space to allow that person? to feel that, to f to be comfortable to cry, to
mm,
express their emotions so that we can share it with them, to be able to support them. So for me, the youth leadership is giving those kids their voice so that as they go on to careers, they can be creative, they can be innovative, and they can fail. But more importantly, they can express themselves in a way that is clear and concise and impactful and will help us
yeah,
change the world.
exactly. Exactly true. Wow. And that's such a needed conversation. We often expect an element to just um, kind of figure it out, but emotional literacy has to be taught. I mean, and
Mhm.
molded as well. Yeah.
Yeah. And I sort of have fun. You know, I
Mhm.
I teach some kids that are in a Chinese academy, and they every moment of their day seems to need to be in school, training,
Okay.
educating. And it's like, but where's the fun? Where's the laughter? Where's the goofing around
Mm,
just for the sake of relaxation?
mm,
And you just need that time. You need that time to run around and just not have anything to do. Because what happens is when you get to be an adult,
mm,
you don't know how to
yeah,
just have nothing to do and embrace that and, love that.
mm, oh, wow. So, I really love your honesty. So, uh, uh, like, according to you, how can men begin that process of grounding themselves, especially if they feel emotional disconnect? So, what do you suggest?
You really you really need to get comfortable at just having conversations with people and
Mhm.
talking about yourself. Um, a lot of times whenever you have to do a report for work, you just give a bunch of facts and figures.
Yeah.
And where the people that make a difference are to be able to connect those facts and figures
Mhm.
with stories that demonstrate the reason why those facts and figures are important.
Mm.
How what impact they have.
Yeah.
Um, the best managers that were leaders that I had were those that
Mhm.
opened the curtain just a little bit to explain to me why we were doing what we were doing without going into any confidentiality issues or things like that. But
Mm.
whenever you start to establish that trust, that
Mhm.
openness with your people, they respect you more.
Mhm.
If you just say, kind of like when we were parents, well, because I
Mm.
said so, because
Okay.
I said so doesn't motivate many people really.
Mm.
But, whenever you have that way to really tap into your gut,
Mm.
look at the body language of whom you're speaking with, whether it's male or female, and how are they reacting to what you're saying. You may be
Mm.
saying it in a way that's not helping the situation. So how
Mhm.
can you restate that? How can you what questions can you ask them to really check that they are understanding what you're trying to
Mhm.
say? So y- you can't do things sometimes flippantly or rush through it. Sometimes some conversations need more time, and you need to be able to assess that. And then some things are, black and white, and you can just
Mm.
quickly give a task and everything's fine and everything's cool and you're on your way. But that takes you back to what I just talked about in the very
Mm.
beginning was Do you know your people well enough to recognize the signs, to know where you need to take more time, to recognize that there's something else going on with that person and their reaction has nothing to do with what you just asked them, but how that is impacting what else is going on with them. I had a person who was excellent at computer programming, and every time it came time for us to say whether or not we wanted to consider promotion, she always said no. And so some of the male managers that I had said, well, she just doesn't, she's not promotion material. She's not management material. She doesn't have any desire for it, and she doesn't have the skills that are needed. So I didn't agree with that, but I didn't also want to just say, I don't agree with you and then go against them. So had conversations with her, and she trusted me enough to tell me that there were things going on with her son that required her to be home at a normal time every day. So in management, she was going to have to travel. She was going to have long hours and sometimes at the last minute change her schedule. And that wasn't going to work. So we said, well, let's just work on areas that would make you someday be stronger as a manager. And we just spent the next several years building her, from her 360 evaluation, see where she needed to work on those weaknesses, some strengths and opportunities, all those things. And then when her child got through all those teenage years and was in school, college, things were going good, we had the conversation again. And she said yes. And she became a fabulous manager. So she would have, if we didn't work with her, she would have just never got beyond, and she probably would have left the company. But as it was, we had a loyal, long-term employee that ended up retiring from our company as a manager. To me, that's a better story than somebody that was frustrated and left because nobody would really take time to get to know them.
Understood.
So, all the guys out there, you need to really tap into your feminine side. You need to get to know your people, have some of those conversations that, may be awkward for you. Um, there's, tough conversations. You may need that third party in those conversations. But role playing is also very helpful. I used to do that with my male managers and my female managers. Here's the conversation you're going to have. Let's gonna run through it. How's it going to go?
Yeah.
And that's always very helpful. So hopefully those are some things that might help your audience.
Exactly. Exactly. I really, really love it. Yeah, definitely. Wow. What a masterclass in leadership with heart, I would say, Vicky. Thank you so much for showing us that vulnerability is not a liability, it's our um, bridge.
Superpower.
Yeah, exactly. Superpower, definitely. Yeah. So, for all the listeners, especially men out there, if you are chasing success but feeling emotionally starved, then it's time to
Mm.
rebalance that equation. And leadership is not just uh, what you do, but it's who you are while you are doing it. So that is much important.
Yeah, and it's something that you have to work on always. Um, you know, the way we are in a stressful situation is our natural behavior. And so it takes a long time to change behavior. You have to work on it every single day. And so if you are somebody that is easily flies off the handle or it feels uncomfortable using your intuition or that feminine energy, then that's something that you should find a coach or a mentor that you can work with to develop skills and practices that will help you so that in those times of stress, you know what to do to keep you from going back to that natural behavior.
Exactly. Lovely. So, dear listeners, if today's episode moved you, share it with a brother, friend, family, or someone, or maybe a team leader who needs to hear this message. And remember that you are not broken, you are actually becoming. So, Vicky, if someone wants to connect with you, what would be the best medium to connect with you?
You can always go to my LinkedIn page,
Mhm.
and that's I have a couple, but Victoria Noethling or Vicki Noethling, you can find me either way. You also can just send me an email to vicky.noethling@gmail.com. And I look at both those places every day. So definitely check out, though, my findyourleadershipconfidence.com
Mm.
or my YouTube channel, which is Vicki Noethling, to see some of those episodes. I have over 547 out there that could help you with all the experts that I bring around the world to connect you to maybe aid in your journey.
Okay. Amazing, amazing. Great, great. Thank you so much, dear listeners. And until next time, this is your host, Avik, reminding you about how special and where real men lead from within. So, have a great day ahead. Thank you so much.